Hello out there, folks. How you all doing? Have you had a good Christmas? Did you get yourself any sim racing goodies for Christmas? Did you buy a new track, a new car, maybe a bit of hardware? I myself bought myself a little Christmas present. Only cost me about the price of a pint down my local pub. But this present, rather than a pint down the local pub, I'll get to enjoy for years. And it is this. The new Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car, the 992 version for R-Factor 2. Here it is. It's gorgeous for a start. And in this video, I'm going to be giving you my opinion, maybe a bit of a review if you like, of this car. Bearing in mind it's my opinion, you may totally disagree. And I'm going to tell you what I think of the comparison of it to the version in Assetto Corsa Competizione, which came out earlier this year. I've got that car as well. We're going to take it for a drive, talk about the differences between the versions. So let's jump in. Here we are. So, if I was to give you a quick, let's turn our pit speed limiter off. If I was to give you a very quick review of this in a nutshell, if you like R-Factor 2 and you like Porsches, should you buy this car? Yes. Yes, you should. Don't even think about it. Buy it. Do it. Do yourself a favour. Do I like this car? No. I freaking love it. It's awesome. I can't believe I'm about to say this because I don't really have favourites when it comes to cars in sim racing, because there are so many that I like for all sorts of little different reasons. There are elements of them that I like for different reasons, but this car, I love it. I think it's one of the best cars in sim racing. You might totally disagree with that. Maybe you just don't like Porsches, maybe, or maybe you don't like the way it's represented but in either sim, but I love it. I like the 992 version in general. I've tried it in several different sims. ACC iRacing, because yes, I that's another thing I treated to myself too. I have iRacing now. I love it. In every sim, it's brilliant. In every sim, it's very similar, despite inherent differences to each sim. It does drive very in generally the same way in all the versions I've tried. I have not tried the modded version for Assetto Corsa Competizione yet, so I'd like to do that at some point. But I have heard very good things, and from what I've heard, it's a similar story. The R-Factor 2 version I'm absolutely loving. Apparently they've worked very closely with Porsche themselves to get this car into the sim, so that's always good to hear. Now, this version of the car, well, let's go over the main differences between this and ACC. So, in this version of the car, in R-Factor 2, you'll see on the dash here, in red, in the little red rectangle there and the blue rectangle, you've got ABS and traction control. They're not operational on this car. They've deliberately done that, apparently. In ACC, you don't have traction control either, but you do have ABS, so you can set that to whatever value you like in it in Assetto Corsa Competizione. For my comparison, I made sure that the ABS was turned off in both cars, seeing as you don't have the option of having it on in R-Factor 2. I do believe the real-life version of this car, you can have the option of having traction control and ABS, or not, but in the series that it races in, I guess, you either have that option or you don't. Anyway, that's one difference. The other differences between this and the ACC version, if you look up to the top right of the dash here, you'll see in a blue rectangle it says dry. In ACC, if you have your dry tyres on, that'll say dry. If you change your tyres to wet, it'll say wet. So that works. In rFactor 2, it doesn't seem to work. Also, when you change your brake bias, you change your brake bias up and down in ACC, you'll get a little graphic coming up here just saying dry, wet, depending on how far forward or rearward you've got your brake bias set. That doesn't come up in rFactor 2 either. Also, the way that if you look across the top of the dash, you'll see I've got my rev lights there, those little LEDs on each side here. Let's see if I can get them to light up in purple. There you go, in purple there. You saw those purple LEDs come up on each side, or left and right of the dash. That tells you when your wheels are slipping under braking. Now, the way it works in rFactor 2 is different to the way it works in ACC. So I'm just going to stop the car here and explain this. There are 4 LEDs on each side. In Assetto Corsa Competizione, if your front left is locking, you'll get 1 LED in the left-hand corner lighting up to tell you your front left is locking. If your rear right is locking, you'll get 1 LED, the bottom one on the right-hand side lighting up. So it tells you which individual wheel is locking, but not to what degree. It just tells you it's locking. In rFactor 2, it doesn't give you the individual wheels. It just tells you which side is locking. However, it works differently, because if you're locking your wheel a little bit on the left-hand side, whichever one it is, front, back, or both, if it's just a little bit, you'll get 1 LED. If it's a lot, it'll go all the way up to 4. So that's kind of a big difference as well. The other difference is that both cars in both sims have shift protection. So if you're in a high gear and your revs are high, so I'm in second at the moment, and I try and change down to first, it's not going to let me. You can hear the shift. There you go, it's now let me because the revs have dropped. Also, if you do not have your foot on the accelerator, so if I'm on first here and I want to change up to second, I'm going to take my foot off the accelerator. I can't change up to first. My foot, there you go, if it's on the accelerator, has to be pressing on the accelerator to change up. Now, the difference between that and the ACC version is that in this car it's a lot more aggressive. And also in the ACC version there's no upshift protection. You can just go up the gears whenever you like. You do not have to have your foot on the accelerator. According to the staff at Studio 397, the way it's done here is the way that it is in real life. So, that's my quick capsule review, and there's a few differences. But what about the way it drives compared to the way it drives in ACC? So let's go back to our garage here. Now, to do a fair comparison, I've tried this car in both sims at the same track, Laguna Seca, with the same kind of amount of rubber on the ground and the same time of day and everything else. And also what I've done, you'll see I've already got this setup loaded. I've made a setup here in rFactor 2 called ACC 992 Test. And in Assetto Corsa Competizione, I made one called rFactor 2 Test. And what I've done is tried to match the setups to near enough as exactly as I can for each car, so they're both the same, to give a fair comparison. Because the default setup in rFactor 2 is a bit different to the default setup that you get when you, or the default safe setup that you get when you go shoot Laguna Seca in ACC. There are some values that I was able to match absolutely completely the same. So I was able to set the brake bias exactly the same in this sim as I have it in Assetto Corsa Competizione. I was able to match the tyre pressures exactly. They're in kPa at the moment, but if I change my values from metric, imperial and back again, I can get these in PSI, so I can get the same PSI value as I have in ACC, because that's in PSI. And I was able to match the cambers exactly in both sims. However, there are values which are slightly different. So take an imaginary value. If you've got, say, something like an anti-roll bar or a wing, and your value in one sim is 1 to 10 or 0 to 10, and your value in the other sim is only 0 to 6, if I've got my wing set at 5 in one sim which is halfway in between the parameters available in that sim. I'll set it to 3 in the other sim where my parameters are slightly more squashed and only from 0 to 6. That's the most sort of fair, scientific, if you like, can I use that word, way to do it. Now, what I did find, some more differences, by the way. The default lock in rFactor 2 for your physical lock on your wheel, how far the wheel turns round, not how far your wheels turn, is 540 in Assetto Corsa Composizione. It's 524 in rFactor 2. You can change that in rFactor 2, but you can't in ACC. Also, the ratio, how much you turn your wheel to how much the wheels turn, in rFactor 2 is 16.8. So the closest I could get that set to in ACC was 17 to get the steering feeling quite the same. By the way, a difference between this car and the old GT3 Cup car, the 991, is that also in both sims as well, you've got a much larger physical lock. I think about 800 or 900 for your lock on the old car. The new car, I find in both sims, or any sim I've tried it in, a lot more. I like the steering a lot more, and that's because you've got, you know, between 540 and 524 degrees of steering, so you've got a tighter lock there. Any other differences I need to tell you about in the setup? Oh yes, okay. So one thing, now in both sims you cannot change, and this is why I kind of like this car. It's I think there's going to be some really good racing with this car, because there's not a lot you can do with the setup. So you can't change any of the suspension rates or packers or dampers, bump stops as they are in ACC, and you can't change any of your dampers rates either, so your slow rebounds or your fast bumps, that sort of thing. However, another big difference between the two, in rFactor 2 you have an adjustable differential which can be adjusted between 80 and then 120. The default it comes with is, I think, 100. Now, I did find that when I had everything set up exactly like I had in ACC, that the back end on the Porsche in rFactor 2 was a little bit more twitchy, a little bit more lift-off oversteery. And setting the diff to 120 made it feel as close as damned it, much more like the ACC version. In ACC, you don't have an adjustable diff at all, so I have no idea what it's set at, but the preload feels similar to ACC at 120, or rather it feels much more similar than it would at 100 or 80. So just so you know. So right, we've got our, let's just make sure that that full setup is loaded. We'll load that again, and we'll go out and drive the car. Now, there are kind of differences that are inherent to the tyre model in each sim. The breakaway when the tyres lose grip is a bit different. The way it happens in rFactor 2 is a little bit more gradual than the way it happens in Assetto Corsa Composizione, because of course Assetto Corsa Composizione is using a 5-point tyre model, as far as I know, whereas rFactor 2 is using a fully modelled physical model. So there's slight inherent differences. Also, and I find this with a lot of cars in rFactor 2, pretty much every car that you get in ACC, if you were to, let's turn our pit speed limiter off to do this, if you were to sit there and hold the clutch in, give it the full beans on the revs and drop the clutch, you can spin the wheels up. Now, in rFactor 2, some of the cars you can do that in, some of them you can't, and I don't know why that is. In rFactor 2, with this car, if you do that, it bogs down. I don't know why that is. Give me your thoughts on this in the comments. So I'll just show you that quickly. Clutch in, drop it, and it bogs down. You know, it's not going to spin the wheels unless you've been doing loads of laps and you've got the tyres a bit too hot. Really hot. Or unless you pump up the tyre pressures to a ridiculous amount. So also that affects, if I was to turn my wheel hard right and drop the clutch in ACC, I'd be doing an instant donut because of that factor. In R Factor 2, it bogs down. However, once you do get the car doing a donut, so I sort of had to double clutch it there, it'll do a full donut very nicely. And that's just heated up the tyres. Yeah, there we go. So we'll go back to the pits just to make this fair and go out on a set of normally tyres that haven't been donutted. So where was I going with that? Yes, so when you do a donut in ACC, it sort of does donut, almost comes to a stop, does it again, carries on. But anyway, that's the difference between breakaway. Another thing, before I give you any laps in this car and just show you how it drives, the gearing's different. I don't know why this is. I don't know if it because both sims got their data from different teams. Maybe R Factors was directly from Porsche, and maybe ACC's was from a Porsche team, and they decided to put different gearing in. It's pretty similar. Top speeds are pretty similar, but the gearing's different, especially between 1 and 3rd. So in first, at full revs, hitting the limit, as you can see in the middle there, I'm doing 55 miles per hour. 55 miles per hour. In ACC, that's 60. So in second, in R Factor 2, if I hit the limiter, I'm hitting the limiter at 76 miles per hour. In ACC, that's 80 miles per hour. Now, in 3rd gear, there's an even bigger difference. I'm hitting the limiter at 98 miles per hour. In ACC, that's more, I think it was 110 or 112. So there's a difference there. And that difference kind of, if you're trying to do exactly the same thing in exactly the same corner in each sim, you're most likely going to be in a different gear. Just so you've got, because you've got more of a range of power in ACC than you do in R Factor 2. So for instance, if we come down to this very, very sharp corner coming onto the main straight here, this one coming up here on the left, if I go down to 1st gear, drop the clutch and try and kick the back end out, it's a bit of a hard time because you're hitting the limiter dead early. However, in ACC, because of the way the tyre physics break loose, and also because there's a bit more range, you can get that out in first. So it feels very different. However, if you then take this car in R Factor 2 round that corner in second, so you've got a bit more range, drop the clutch, kick the back end out, it does pretty much exactly what it does in ACC in 1st gear. Right, enough of all of that. Let's get to the driving. So, you now know that this car is set up as closely as I can get it, including brake bias and everything else, to the one in ACC. Both cars have got a little bit of lift off oversteer, and you can get the back end out a little bit under power. So if I lift off, dab the brakes a bit, get the back end going, I can get the back end out quite easily. That's the same in both cars. However, if I go around this corner, lift off and then plant it, it wants to veer out to the left because it really, oh, don't crush the car. Crash the car. I have to go back to the pits now. Sorry about all this going back to the pits and everything, but I'm trying to do everything as close as damned it, and I've got damage turned on in here, so I don't want to be driving around on a damaged car, because it wouldn't be the same as it would be in ACC. Get our pit speed limiter off. They've both got that, in the lower gears, they've got that power to get the back end out, much more so than, say, the earlier version, the 991 version of this car in both sims again. But they've got that kind of Porsche lift-off oversteer as well. And you can really plant the power coming out of corners, and it will lean on that back end. The weight's there, and you've got great traction out of the corners. But then if you come off the power or dab the brakes going into a corner with the weight at the back end, you can get that coming around nicely. I have noticed as well, I was at a race in these on one of the low fuel motorsport servers at Botanyar Ring, and I did find that if you don't want all that lift off oversteer and more stability under braking, you want to really lock that back diff up. But then of course it's a little bit understeery as well. You can totally counter that with the anti-roll bars. You can really set the anti-roll bars at the front quite low and the ones at the rear quite high, and it becomes a lot more pointy but a lot more stable under braking because that back diff's locked up. Also, the rear wing in this car makes a heck of a lot of difference when you're at speed. If it's low, you'll be losing the back end round corners on the high speed corners quite a lot under lift off and braking. Bit under power as well. But then you set it high and it really holds the car down, but of course you've got that knock-on reaction of it being a little bit more understeery. Once that rear wing is high and the diff's locked up, you can then really even that out and counter it with your anti-roll bar settings. And it's just a dream to drive. Now, you'll notice in the title of this video that I have a question for you guys out there. A question for my subscribers, but also if you're brand new to the channel, hello, and I hope you're enjoying it. Tell me what you think of this idea as well. And if you want to get involved with this idea, subscribe to the channel, and you'll get updates as and when I do this idea. My question to you guys out there is, because I run a lot of live stream servers, or, well, if you're a subscriber, you'll know I run a lot of live stream servers in AMS2, because it's very easy to just boot up a server in AMS2, Automobilista 2. By the way, I hope we get a version of this car in Automobilista 2 as well, because we've already got quite a lot of Porsches in that game. I do a lot of live stream servers. We've got a great community of people. You know who you are. The racing's pretty damn great. And over the course of this year, we've had a lot of fun. I would like to know how many of you have a copy of R Factor 2. And also, if you could tell me in the comments whether you have a copy of R Factor 2, and also what content, or rather premium Studio 39 content you own within R Factor 2. Because what I would love to do is run a live stream server in R Factor 2. Now, I used to do this years ago before Automobilista 2 ever came out. But a lot has changed since then. There's been a lot of updates to R Factor 2, so I had to kind of relearn how to do it. And I have the capabilities of doing that now. So, would you like a live streamed open, this will be open to the public, R Factor 2 server? What I can do is make that a free content server, so anyone with R Factor 2 can join, regardless of whether they've paid for extra DLC or not. So what I do is use one of the free cars, like for instance the Radical SR3, at one of the free tracks, like say Zandvoort or Silverstone, which are free tracks in R Factor 2. Zandvoort, a free laser scan track, by the way, as far as I know. So I'll do that for everyone. But also, I'd very much like to run a server with some of the really high quality paid DLC. And the first server I run like that, I'd love it to be this car. So do you own this car? If you don't, it's only the price of a pint of beer down your local pub, and it is excellent. Or just tell me what other cars you maybe you own all of the endurance cars, or all of the GT3s, or you own everything. Tell me what tracks you own. Do you own all of them? Do you own just a few of them? Because I want to get a rough idea of what is the most popular DLC between all of you, so I can choose a track that hopefully you'll all have. Now, if you're an R Factor 2 fan and you don't have much DLC, one of the reasons you may have bought it may purely be for the excellent Nordschleifer ring. If you've got that track, then that comes with the Nürburgring GP track. So maybe that might be a good track to do it at. Or, I mean, I'd love to do this car at this track, Laguna Seca. Monza, by the way, is half price in the Steam sale at the moment. And there's 25% off the endurance pack, I think. But yeah, please let me know whether you're a subscriber to my channel or not. You can all comment on this video. Do you own R Factor 2, and what content do you own? And I will tally up the results of that, and shortly be knocking up a little server so we can have some online racing that you can all join in. And we'll use a bit of the weather system, maybe use a bit of day to night transition, or maybe we'll just keep it dry and sunny. Anyway, that is pretty much it from me. Like I said, this car, in my opinion, fantastic. In all sims that I've tried it, it's one of my favourite cars to drive in sim racing. In R Factor 2, it's absolutely superb. It's absolutely superb in all of the sims that I've tried. But I really do like this version. It's so Porsche. I do hope, by the way, I would like to see, tell me what you think about this in the comments as well. I would like it if Studio 397 could give us a few different configurations of this car. So when you go into your customized car settings in R Factor 2, some of the cars have different configurations. I'd like to see this car with the option of ABS added, or any other features this car comes with. And I do wonder about this, why the way the tyres slip under brake. Let's get them to come on, locking the wheels on the inside there. It's great that comes on. I do wonder why it's different in R Factor 2 than it is in ACC. Let me know if you've got any thoughts about that. But yeah, anyway, let's spin the car around. There you go. I can get a donut out of it now because the tyres have got a bit warm. As soon as I say that, it stalls. There we go. Bit of a spin. Stop the car there. Thank you very much for watching. Tell me what you think in the comments, and look forward to racing in R Factor 2 as well as Automobilista 2 with you soon, because there's a big update coming for Automobilista 2 as well, and we're all very excited. Thank you, Studio 397, for my Christmas present. Goodbye. If you want this channel to survive, do me a favor and hit subscribe. May seem like a small thing to do, but it enables me to make more videos for you. By hitting that button, you can help us thrive. Subscribe and keep this channel alive. Don't cost nothing, don't take no time. Come on now, keep this channel alive.